Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new year. It is a brand new era. We've got UFC 324 Banter, and it's going down live, guys. I'm so excited to break down this card. We've got the interim lightweight title on the line. Paddy the Baddy Pimblett making his first attempt at UFC gold. He's undefeated in the promotion so far. Can he keep it going against the highlight, Justin Gaethje? Does he have a swan song in him? Does he have one last dance? We're going to find out all of that and more on Saturday night. I want to say thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in live. We got already Cam in the building, Dixon in the building, Tone Miggins in the building. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. And I did coach a match earlier, so please forgive me if my voice comes and goes throughout this breakdown. But in the new year, we cannot do it alone. We have none other than your brother and mine, Wizz MMA in the building. How you feeling, my man?
It feels like it's been forever. 6 long weeks of absence, of no mixed martial art. Well, maybe not no mixed martial arts, but no UFC. It's been really tough, if I'm being honest. And I'm just happy that we have an event tomorrow, or we're back on the regularly scheduled program, and excited that maybe we waited a day to do these breakdowns. One fight fell off, and then a couple of them just had some really weird shit happened to him, to say the least. But really excited to break these fights down with you again, Liam, and with the chat. Shout out to my guys, Dixon in the chat. We got Cameron, shitty MMA pod lover. Oh, you're on the wrong podcast here. Tron the First, all you guys. Shout out for being here, man. We appreciate y'all. And one thing before we start the show, very near and dear to my heart. For anyone going through any like mental health or personal stuff, please, you don't have to do this alone. Reach out to me, reach out to anyone, friends, family. I personally have experienced it myself, and you don't have to do this alone. No matter how tough it is, no matter what you're going through, there's a whole community surrounding you for a reason. So let's get some fights going. Much love and appreciation.
Absolutely love that message. On Paddy the Baddy Fight Week, nonetheless, big advocate
Absolutely.
himself. So it's a great week to have a great week. It's a great day to have a great day. God bless you all. And let's get right into the action, guys. We got Ty Miller going after Adam Fugitt in the first fight of the night. Interesting one to start off the Paramount era, my man. And I'll let you start it off. We got a long man striker in Ty Miller. Feel like he might be right up your alley. What are you thinking about this one, buddy?
Yeah, I've actually been around the room with Ty Miller for a couple of training sessions, nothing too crazy. Not this camp, but previously when I visited Arizona. And the guy is as advertised when you watch the tape. Really long and lanky boxer who doesn't really mix in the kicks all that often, but is really sharp and crisp with his hands, puts together some good combinations. Where he falls short sometimes is his takedown defense, but the one thing I really like is that he pops back up, and his urgency to get up off the ground is very good. Now, that was against lower level competition, we have to say, and he's a minus 600 favorite last I checked at Bet Online. So you got to take that with a grain that he's faced. I'm not saying Adam Fugitt is gonna give him anything that he hasn't seen in the octagon just yet. But one thing about Adam Fugitt is you can, depend on him to actually try and wrestle. He's found some success in the UFC with his wrestling attempts, but unfortunately his last couple of fights got chinned. And if the fight goes similarly to the way the last two went, where, a couple of takedowns and then after he fails, getting gassed out towards the end of fights, to middle to end of fights, just won't slide. And I think Ty Miller will find the chin. I just feel like Adam Fugitt now also, we have to mention, used to train at Fight Ready. I don't know why the name escaped my brain for a second, but trained at Fight Ready for quite some time. As we all know, Santino DeFranco, the head coach at Fight Ready, is no longer coaching there. He is retired. And a lot, if not all the fighters actually have left their pro team. So that's one thing that we will have to pay attention to as we continue to break these fights down week over week. So Fugitt, I think, is now training at another gym in Arizona. I have not, to be honest, checked to see specifically what gym. Now, one thing that's weird in this matchup is that gym change, because with a gym change comes a game plan change, and sometimes it could mean a style change. And if Adam Fugitt only goes in and chain wrestles, I feel like he could find some success here against Ty Miller. But ultimately, I'm just going to go ahead and predict Ty Miller to get this done via KO, second round. And let's see where his career heads to. I have a lot of promise for Ty Miller if he can shore up that takedown defense and improve on his grappling game.
Yeah, man. Overall, I feel like Adam Fugitt is one of these guys that has a UFC resume that's kind of difficult to parse out, because he comes to the UFC, loses to Michael Morales, Mike Malott, Islam Dulatov. None of those losses jump off the page. It's like, man, what an egregious loss. This guy's a bum. He's not skilled. It's like, no, those are kind of tough outs, right? But then the problem is he's got a win over Josh Quinlan, 1-3 in the UFC. Yusaku Kinoshita, 0-2 in the UFC, cut from the promotion. So it's like he just really hasn't had much go his way, where his wins don't age well. And by the way, that Quinlan fight was a pretty gross split decision there. I think I bet Fugitt that night. I was going to go back and check, but I definitely, felt like he was the side going into that fight with Quinlan. And even that fight against the guy who, he probably should have had some advantages against. He really didn't have a clear win. He had to gut it out. It was gross. It was ugly. It was one or two strikes that kind of made the difference there. And so I think that when I was listening to other people's analysis, I thought, the talk of him not having kicks is a little bit overstated. He likes to throw kicks off of his lead leg, so he's not putting guys away with his kicks a lot, but he is touching guys, showing them looks to the head and the body, kind of keeping them honest with their hands. And then once he gets, positioning, once he has your hands disciplined, he starts, sniping you with those fast shots down the middle. And he does have a couple knockouts. He's a guy that's very patient, though. If he doesn't get the knockout early, sometimes he kind of just finds a cruise control, starts pitter-pattering a little bit. But overall, I think that Ty Miller, as he gets more comfortable, is going to have more opportunities to land knockouts, to be devastating with his hands. Fighting an older guy in the division, Fugitt just celebrated his 37th birthday, right? So a massive age gap between these two guys, a debutant in Ty Miller. I don't think that the money line is playable, but I do think that Ryan in the chat talked about how I would probably look to play this, where if you wanted to get invested in the Miller side and look for plus money, that would probably be a way that I would think about it. But I have to acknowledge, he is a guy that's patient, but he's also a guy that can hit you with one or two big ones and kind of put you down. The other thing is, I think Ty Miller's best win is against Eric Nolan, a guy that gave Basinger Susurgayev a really decent fight on short notice, up a weight class. And Ty Miller kind of handled him accordingly, very clearly won the fight, won most of the exchanges. And to your point, the thing that stands out the most about this kid on tape is it's hard to hold him down. You take him down, he pops right back up to his feet, does not accept being on the bottom. He quad pods, stands back up, fights people off, and he knows how to use the leverage of his hips. So when guys get overextended on the top, he pops his hips up, lets them fall over the top, clears space, and goes back to work on the feet. So overall, I think that this is going to be a fight where Ty Miller, might have to deal with some takedowns, might have to get back up to his feet a couple times. But I think once he gets up to his feet, has some distance, is able to put hands on Fugitt with regularity and pace, I think he's going to put him away. So give me Ty Miller via knockout in round 2 or 3 for my pick. All right, brother. Next up, we were supposed to have Cam Smotherman fighting. So I want to just say prayers up for Cam Smotherman. I saw he put out a video. Looks like he's okay. But instead, we got the heavyweights up next, and it's Josh Hokit, Denzel Freeman. I'm going to take a sip of water for the chat. But I'll tell you guys, we're operating on borrowed time with this voice. My coaching voice takes a lot out of me. So now, guys, we move to this fight. And, let's talk about wrestling. We got two guys here with a wrestling background, right? On the one side, Fresno State All-American Josh Hokit kind of restored the program in some ways. Josh Hokit, in terms of his winning tradition, going out there and getting some real hardware for the school. And he did it while he was a walk-on for their football program as well. So when you look at Josh Hokit, the fact that he was on the 49ers practice squad, all these things tell you this guy is a real athlete, and he's passed a lot of different checks in that regard. when you look at Denzel Freeman on the other side, he's also an impressive athlete, but he's kind of followed a little bit of a different path. And I would say as a pure wrestler, I would rate him as slightly less credentialed. Now, I know that he was competing for opportunities, trying to get into the Greco-Roman world scene, and he was part of the world-class athlete program for the Army WCAP. That's impressive stuff, and also he had some success at the college level. Was it difficult for me to find his specific college wrestling results? It was. Josh Hokit, you won't have that problem. He was an NCAA D1 All-American, wrestling guys like Bo Nickel at the national tournament. And did he get mogged in that match? Yes, he did. But on the wrestling mat, Bo Nickel is one of the most impressive guys out. So when you look at a guy like Josh Hokit, you have to respect what he's done. He's 28 years of age. He's a young guy. He's a little bit smaller for a heavyweight. He comes in, 235, talking about another guy in Denzel Freeman who's probably 20 pounds heavier. The difference is, I think Josh Hokit is a little bit faster, more nimble, more athletic, and he's a guy that's used to wrestling to legs. When you look at his Contender Series fight, he attempted 13 takedowns in a fight that ended in round 2, and you're not going to find a lot of heavyweights that do that. Look at Denzel Freeman and how timid he was, with all due respect, in that fight with Merrick Bujlo, where I feel like he could have had some success if he wrestled. He didn't want to. He was afraid to wrestle with that guy. And, when you look at where Denzel Freeman's at, he's got some quality wins. He's got the Stephen Asplund win on the regional scene. I think you could argue he's fought the better level of competition overall. But I think that when you look at how their skills match up, I rate Josh Hokit as a guy who showed me when he went 3 rounds in Bellator that he can keep shooting those takedowns for all 3 rounds. He does damage when he takes people down. He tries to hit them in the face hard, and as they're working their way back up, he shoots another takedown or punches them. So I feel like if you just have a pure striking matchup between these two guys, I think Denzel's a little bit more comfortable. I think he'd have a little bit, better time finding his range, let's say. But I feel like Josh Hokit is going to force the issue, wrestle to this guy's legs. And I've seen Denzel Freeman get taken down before. I've seen Denzel Freeman make some mistakes positionally before and kind of get bullied around in some of these fights, especially earlier on when he was fighting smaller guys, ironically, right? The bigger heavyweights he has a better time with. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The bigger they are, the slower they are. And I do think that in the case of what could be a difference maker for Josh Hokit and Denzel Freeman, it's the fact that he's younger, smaller, and faster. And I think that Josh Hokit's going to be able to get to the positions that he wants. So could Denzel Freeman offer him a real challenge? Could this fight go minutes? Absolutely. Could this be Josh Hokit getting exposed? Listen, I find his gimmick grating. I think that some of the things he said are embarrassing to the sport of wrestling. I was like, all right, fine. Let football claim this guy. But when I break down fights, I just try and keep it a buck, right? And I think that if these two guys were matched up on a wrestling mat, I would pick Josh Hokit to win. And in this fight, I'm going to pick Josh Hokit to win. So that's my analysis. What do you think, Wizz?
You really covered a lot of the points there. Now, one thing that I will bring up, and I was there, cage side, for that 3-round fight that Josh Hokit had against Spencer Smith, I think his name was, in Bellator. And I really was disappointed in the overall performance from Josh. I understand that it was 3 rounds. It's his debut, and he's still, getting the ball rolling. But he should have handled accordingly against Spencer Smith. I fear that the extra 23 pounds here to Denzel Freeman will serve to his advantage when it comes to stuffing takedowns if he's able to get a good first read on his shots. Because, yes, Josh Hokit will be faster, and Denzel Freeman in his last fight looked like he was scared to throw any offense whatsoever, especially against someone like Mark Bujlo. But time and time again, we've talked about it, and we've seen guys come from LFA, from all sorts of organizations, and their first fight in the UFC is just utter monstrosity. Like, they just seems like they forgot how to fight. Let's ring the bell back to Carlos Prates against Officer Trevin Giles. Oh, no, sorry, not Officer Trevin Giles. It's I always get the two.
Is it Mitch Raposo?
No,
Who did he fight first in the UFC?
It was where he was down 2 rounds and he got the knockout in the 3rd. Why am I forgetting his name?
I think that was Trevin Giles, but everybody's down on the cards to Trevin Giles until they. So he fought Mitch Ramirez on. I said Mitch Raposo. I think he fought Mitch Ramirez on Contender, and then he fought Trevin in his debut.
Yeah, so I do think that there is the narrative here that Denzel Freeman could come out here in his second UFC fight and look a ton better, and I think that is the case. I do rate that Denzel Freeman's striking is going to be a little bit better than Josh Hokit's, specifically in the defensive department, because Josh Hokit, if you look in that last fight against Max Jimenez, oh my goodness, you see this with his head like sticking forward, like punch me, right here, it's open. Like he is landing, don't get me wrong, but the opportunity for countering is there. And if Denzel Freeman lets his hands go, he potentially could take advantage of Josh Hokit if we get to the second round and, Hokit's huffing and puffing. I don't see a world where Denzel Freeman can't take him down and, finish with ground and pound. So for me, I'm taking the dog shot here on Denzel Freeman. And, I'm hoping that the first time out was just a fluke and he shows that the lights aren't too bright for him. But Josh Hokit's always funny on the mic, so it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely, man. I will just say the details that I should have mentioned, forgot to mention. You got a former LFA champion, obviously, in Denzel Freeman, so he has the better, wins in mixed martial arts. He did beat Hugo Kuna, who I believe is also a Contender Series veteran. But I will note, he got taken down in that fight in the first round. He had to get some explosive stand-ups to get back into that fight. And Hugo kind of gassed out badly, didn't really have much to offer in the second round. I do think that Josh Hokit, for all of his other faults, shows up prepared for these fights. So, if he gets damaged, I think that would be the thing that could gas him out. But I do think that everything we've seen from him points to having good cardio, at least in what we've seen so far. But this should be an interesting test, man. I'm fired up for this one. Two wrestlers, so there can't be a loser here,
Yeah.
Two American wrestlers. One of us got to win, baby.
Don't get me wrong. I could be very wrong in this one, and I'm fine. You are the wrestling expert here.
Hey,
there's a reason why we cover different sports.
There you go. And honestly, when you look at these two guys, there's a lot of similarities. So one guy's got to go out there and distinguish themselves. I think it's the aggression from Hokit that makes a difference, but it should be a great fight, and we're going to find out more. I wouldn't mind seeing Josh Hokit get humbled, I'll tell you that, but I got to see it to believe it, and I just don't know that Denzel's that guy. All right, man. That brings us to our next fight, and my guy Dixon won't let us talk about this fight without talking about the line movement, and this has been one of the steady movers throughout the week. You look at Bet Online, Alexander Hernandez opens minus 300. Now we're looking at minus 110 in the current market. So it is definitely, taking a big movement here, right? We go from, what are we talking about? 75%. Now we're looking at 50-50. It's 25% move. So obviously, which side the action's come in on, right? It's been heavy on the Michael Johnson side. But I always like to relay one story, and I'm going to just give a tiny bit of color and throw this analysis over to you, my man. But I was sitting with a buddy one time, and he's telling me, I'm going to bet Michael Johnson. And I'm like, buddy, keep the money in your wallet, please. Against Carlos Diego Ferreira. I'm like, please keep the money in your wallet. And he's watching as Michael Johnson's out there painting a masterpiece. Beautiful shots. He's going, why did you do this to me? How could you do this to me? I wanted to bet Michael Johnson. He looks like $1 million. I was like, don't. I was like, just trust me. Keep the money in your pocket. And he's sitting there. He's like, you fool. You shouldn't. How did you? And all of a sudden, Michael Johnson's just asleep on the floor. I was like, aren't you glad you have that money in your wallet? If you look at Michael Johnson's career, he's got some of the best wins. But Michael Johnson is a certified bag fumbler. So I get the plus money, but I see people following it now that Chalk, my brother, tell me I'm not crazy for thinking the right guy was favored to start here. What do you think?
Yeah, and I'm pulling up my notes here too, and I'm just very surprised, but also like I'm not gonna say I get the line movement, but I understand the hesitancy also when trying to or looking to fade Alexander Hernandez. Completely get it as a big favorite because he's not the most trustworthy guy. But when I first looked at this matchup, yeah, it really just comes down to Johnson is 39 years old. He's had 43 professional fights. That's a lot of mileage. You look at his previous fight against Zellhuber, he was a big underdog there, and I think Zellhuber more so fumbled that fight than anything. The dude did not throw hands. He just looked to kick. And when you're someone that has only flashed kicks in a fight, it's going to be easy to counter. So Michael Johnson just, waited for the kicks, parried, countered over and over and over. And the striking, definitely, I favor Michael Johnson, but I think that's where I just kind of draw the line, because I do think the much younger fighter in Alexander Hernandez, who has the grappling advantage, the rest of this fight, which has shown to alter style in the last few fights and really shoot multiple takedowns over and over again. He's been landing them. He's been landing some good ground and pound too. I would say he's maybe more durable than Michael Johnson at this point in their career as well. I do think that Hernandez holds the power advantage, not the striking advantage. So maybe he lands one like CDF landed on Michael Johnson and deads him there. That is a big possibility too. So I say all this to say, like at minus 200, where the line was when I initially started researching this fight, maybe I wouldn't touch this fight with a 10-foot pole. But if you're giving me evens, I'm kind of tempted here on Alexander Hernandez. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for a bat signal. And I don't know, maybe I'll get it tonight and lock it in. But as of right now, no position. I do think Alexander Hernandez gets the win. I think it's a decision here for Hernandez. Michael Johnson, with the vet savvy, should be able to survive unless his durability is completely shot. But with all the grappling and whatnot, I wonder what the subline is on Hernandez. I haven't checked. It's just like something that's flowing in my brain as we speak and as I break this fight down. Let me check and see Hernandez, how many submissions he's had to knockouts. He's had 8 knockout wins, 2 submission wins in his career. Yeah, maybe never mind. But who knows?
I mean, the submission, I will say, has been getting cracked across the market. Listen, to give my actual analysis of this fight, right, I was kind of just telling a funny story before. I think Michael Johnson has gotten a couple wins, and the Zellhuber win, you take your hat off to the guy, right? He went out there and did his job, right? He didn't do anything wrong, kind of fought within himself and got the win. And we've seen him get big wins in the past. But going life and death with Darius Flowers, like, I'm sorry, that's just not like a good standard of victory. And Alexander Hernandez, you could say similar things, right? He had a couple of ugly fights in this run. But Chase Hooper is legit good. Carlos Diego Ferreira, we saw what he did to Michael Johnson. He knocked him fucking stone dead. So when you just look at like these two guys and juxtapose their most recent performances, I feel like Michael Johnson has looked kind of old and a little bit shot. And I feel like Alexander Hernandez has almost looked career best. And when you look at Alexander Hernandez and the fact that he was taking guys down earlier in his career, taking their back, getting a hold of them, I think that's something he still keeps in his back pocket. And when you look at Michael Johnson, he's been submitted many times. He's not a guy who's very comfortable in ground exchanges. He still makes big mistakes. The Darius Flowers fight, again, that's another prime example of like Michael Johnson, having to be coached through positions that he's done for 20 years. And for me, that's just the problem with Michael, is he needs to be overcoached, and he's a guy that gets in his own head. And I feel like Alexander Hernandez right now, his confidence is high. So if this line flips entirely, that would maybe be the only thing that would get me involved in a money line. But ultimately, I just feel like I don't see what the market's seeing here. I think Michael Johnson deserves respect, great resume, great all-time wins, but Hernandez has some quality wins as well. And more recently, I think his wins have looked better. So ultimately, give me Hernandez to get the win here. And I think he's going to finish Michael. But I could see it going either way. I'm not like totally bullish on that, but that if you ask me how do I see it going down, I think Alex is going to finish it. All right, man. That brings us to our next fight on the card. And this is a really weird one because I used to find myself, making the case for Alex Perez, but I don't know that we're seeing the same guy in 2026 and 2025 that we used to see, right? And his only win in his most recent run in the promotion is Matheus Nicolau. I say with all due respect, that's one of the chinniest guys in the flyweight division. The stats will back you up on that. He's been hurt, dropped, knocked out, finished in the flyweight division a number of times. And when you look at a guy like Alex Perez, he's got calf kicks that he can throw out there. He mixes it up in the wrestling. He's an old school wrestling guy from the U.S. And you see how he wrestles, man. He's a tough wrestler. He really knows his stuff. But I think his body has been failing him for a long time. He's the younger guy in this matchup. You'd never tell by the injuries, by everything else that's gone wrong with him, inside and outside the cage. So wish him nothing but the best. But I look at a guy like Alex Perez as a guy who at any time can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. A guy who could be having a ton of success. Look at the Asual Mabayev fight. It's the most frustrating when you're trying to deal with a guy who his own worst enemy at times is himself. And when you look at the other side, Charles Johnson, I feel like is the opposite. Like he's always going to give himself the best chance to win. He will fight through any adversity to find victory. He's never been finished in mixed martial arts. And you look at how he competes, the quality that he holds himself to. And, when he gets hurt, he bites down like a dog to stay in the fight, man, to look for any way to win. And I feel like when you've got a guy who it's almost impossible to get him out of there, and a guy who, when things start to go wrong, they go all the way wrong, it falls all the way off the cliff, it's a bad matchup. So I don't love the price here. I won't be jumping on the Charles price tag because he normally likes to, start a little slow and work his way into it, build up a rhythm. But if you tell me that Charles starts getting into his flow early in round 2, I think he's going to take all the way over, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to get Alex out of there. Just the way that Charles has been fighting lately and the respect that I put on his name, that Joshua Van knockout, that Loner Kavanaugh knockout, he's sending guys' chin to the stratosphere, and that's not something he was doing his whole career. So I feel like Charles Johnson right now is another guy whose confidence is at an all-time high, and I feel like the exact opposite is true for Alex Perez. So, should be a good scrap. I think the minutes will be competitive, but I think Charles Johnson gets his hand raised. What do you think, Wiz?
Yeah, I think Charles Johnson gets his hand raised too. Looking at the fight, shout out to Alex Perez. In the past, I've worked with Perez at Team Oyama, and just calling a spade here. His last win was against Mateus Nicolau, who not quite sure if he was training at Oyama at the time. I think they were both training at Oyama and just separate sides of the room. Very odd kind of matchup there. Nonetheless, the last one against Asual Mabayev was really winning the fight 2-0 in my cards. It was actually 1-1 in all judges' scorecards, surprisingly enough. I thought it was a clear 2-0 for Perez going into the third, and just gets caught in that ghillie, shooting for a takedown after he got, I think it was hurt. And that is just something that Alex Perez is always liable to do. He's always liable for two things. A, getting hurt or injured in fights, and B is just, sticking his head into submissions. And against Charles Johnson, a guy who is as scrambly as he is and as well-versed as he is in the wrestling department, I think that spells trouble. Early on, I think Alex Perez finds some success here because Charles Johnson, as you mentioned, starts very slow. And what I'm looking to do is to find a good live line later on in the fight after round 1, maybe mid-round 2 on Charles Johnson. That's how I'm looking to approach the fight personally. I think this is Charles Johnson's year. Realistically, you look at his record and 1 loss in his last 5, and that 1 loss is against Ramzan Temirov, who got popped for PEDs. And then you look at the rest, you rattle off names like Loner Kavanaugh by KO, Suma Darji decision, Joshua Van by knockout, and the Hadley fight. If we all remember, he was in some deep shit, some deep submissions, and was able to scramble out of them completely at the end of the second round. Huge armbar for Hadley, and belly down, I believe it was, which may have been the reason why he was able to get out of it. Still was able to get out of it and rally back and win the fight. I think this is a Charles Johnson spot. I just don't think it's a money line spot. I think this is something where you either wait live or you don't take it at all because of the deficiencies that we see in the first round from Johnson. He seems motivated. In interviews, he's talking about how he sees a path to the title now, has beat the champ already by knockout. All signs point to Charles Johnson to bat signal.
Lord willing, it's Charles Johnson's time. I'm going to quickly flash to my preview for the flyweight division, these are the people that I think have a chance to wear that flyweight crown at the end of the year. Joshua Van, Manel Kape, Tatsuro Taira, Alexandre Pantoja, Kyoji Horiguchi, and rounding out the list, Charles Johnson. Y'all must have forgot. This man is still in the contention. You have to respect this man. So I think that overall, this is going to be a make or break fight for his career at his age. And I think for that reason, I'm going to trust Charles Johnson to go out and get it done.
And man, he is one of the most well-rounded fighters in that division, I have to say. He can do everything and at a high level. So
Charles Johnson to a main event. Charles Johnson to a main event. That is what we're preaching. That is what we're calling for. If he wins this fight, Charles Johnson to a UFC main event near you. Next up, my man, we got the minor, Nikita Krylov, taking on Modestas Bukauskas, the Baltic Gladiator. And my man, I'll start us off with this one because I find this to be a difficult fight to call. You know, I think this being a closely lined fight is fair, but I think that if you take Nikita Krylov's body of work and you examine it, it's a better body of work than Modestas Bukauskas. You know, these are guys within 2 years of age, you know, obviously a little bit more fight miles on the 41 fight veteran, Nikita Krylov. He did have a serious injury as well. But when you're looking at a fight like this, you know, you got a guy in Nikita Krylov who has dangerous head kicks. He can box. You know, he takes a lot of risks in the boxing, but he can box as well. And he's a guy that does have grappling. You know, when you look at this guy as a DFS commodity, it's insane what he's produced, right? Like 10 out of 11 UFC wins were 100+ point performances. And when you look at those fights, like his last 3 wins in a row, he got 120+ points. This is just a guy that goes out there and when he wins, he finishes or dominates. You know, like he takes guys down, controls them on the ground, you know, and he competed with guys that are high level. So I think that he's fought the better guys. I think that he has the better wins overall. And I think Modestas, you can poke some holes in his resume. He's done well lately, but you could argue that the Pauga fight maybe shouldn't have went his way. That was a close fight. You know, he definitely won that one, got a unanimous decision. The Cutelaba fight, even fewer people thought he won that fight. And it was a split decision. And, you know, he's lucky to walk away from that one. He won Cutelabas 8-10 in the UFC. So I look at these guys and I feel like if Nikita Krylov was not on a 2-fight losing streak, and you can't ignore those results, but if he wasn't on that streak, if you zoomed out, he's the better fighter. So for those reasons, I'm going to pick Nikita Krylov, but I'm not uber confident in this one. What do you think, Wizz?
Spot on, man. Really spot on with this breakdown because I thought the same exact thing. You look at Modestas Bukauskas and, yeah, he's rattled off 4 wins in a row. His last loss was to Vitor Petrino, that check hook. But you look at it, Martin Prachnio by arm triangle, okay. Rafael Cerquera, okay. No disrespect to these guys. They may or may not be able to beat my ass, probably. Ion Cutelaba, I really didn't think, as you mentioned, I don't think he had won that fight. I was watching that one live, and I remember it even before taping it this week. I remember how the fight went, and I was just really surprised at the end how they judged it in Bukauskas' favor. So very fortunate to get that split. And then lastly, Paul Craig, who, let's face it, the guy went down to 185 after losing a couple fights at 205 and then went back up because he didn't want to cut anymore, and he was still losing at 185 and realized that he just had no energy, no strength against these guys at middleweight. And then Nikita Krylov, man, I just feel really bad for because this guy was legit one of my favorite light heavyweights on the roster and one of the most exciting to watch. Dude has a lot of miles on the tank, 30-11. 33 years old, which for 205 is young. The issue is this guy's defense is just not there. His striking defense, at least. And he's abandoned the grappling somewhat in his last 2 fights. Last fight against Bogdan Guskov, not the best look. Getting knocked out by this version of Dominic Reyes after we've seen him hindsight win a couple more after it in the fashion that he has is not a bad look by any means. But why aren't you going towards your grappling? That's my big question mark here. And I just don't know if I can trust him to do it. Is it something related to, I believe it was a 2-year layoff or a 1.5-year layoff for a shoulder injury for Krylov that set him out? and apparently it was a really bad injury, and he suffered to get back in the cage and contemplated retirement, if I remember correctly too. So is it because of that? Is he all that much motivated? He mentioned that he took the Guskov fight really fast in an interview after, I believe it was it a 4-month break in between the two? Yeah, it was a 4-month break. He got knocked out brutally by Dominic Reyes and then got knocked out 4 months later by Bogdan Guskov. It's like you don't expect your chin to recover that quickly from that first knockout, let alone you go there and you get chinned by another heavy hitter at 205. So what do you feel like we can expect? Because look, Bukauskas is not hurting anybody in the UFC, but you don't. Yeah,
Except Paul Craig.
Yeah, except Paul Craig. But it seems like you don't have to be the biggest puncher to hurt Nikita Krylov right now because his defense is all out of sorts and his hands are always down and he's not going for takedowns. So what version are we getting from Nikita Krylov? Ever since he went bald, something has been wrong. So maybe bald Nikita Krylov is not the thing. It's not it. All this to say, man, I'm just passing on this fight. I would rather stay on the sidelines and protect the bank than wager any money. But if I'm going to give a pure pick, I'm going to say that Nikita Krylov goes out there and rights the ship here. I know it's only been 5 months now since the last knockout. But, man, I really just don't think Modestas is going to hurt him. And I would hope that he shoots takedowns here.
I mean, the one thing I would always pose to people, is like, do we not think that Bogdan Guskov or, even Dominic Reyes, I mean, Dominic Reyes obviously has his own chin issues at this point, but, would we not pick those guys to go out there and knock out Modestas Bukauskas more often than not or defeat him in a fight? I think we all would. So that's the other thing about this fight is it's a step down for Nikita Krylov, and Bukauskas, was fighting some of the lower end guys in the division, Paul Craig, obviously, after his middleweight run, was a little bit diminished there. So I think that Bukauskas, he's got to really go out there and prove that he's of this ilk. Even though Krylov's losing, he's losing to guys that I would pick to do probably similar things to Modestas, unfortunately. So should be an interesting fight, man. And I want to just say shout out to our guy Dan from Half the Battle out there doing the Lord's work for the people, telling people to like. And I truly appreciate the support from an OG in the space, a guy who's growing and showing people how to do it. So big blessings, my man. Now, on to the next fight.
If Dan's videos aren't part of your weekly research, I don't know what you guys are doing. That's all I'm going to say.
100% Half the Battle OG. Been around since Shaq. Will be around until there is no town. So shout out to our guy, Dan Levy. Big fan of his work. But that being said, I've been a big fan of Ateba Gautier's work. This guy is absolutely dismantling fools inside the octagon. We got to be realistic about the fact that his opponents have a combined record of 0-7 inside that octagon. So Pulyaev, by virtue of his one UFC win, is definitionally the best guy that he has ever fought in the UFC. So he's taking a minor step up in competition here. But Pulyaev does present some interesting challenges. Long guy, likes to strike from the outside using his kicks, but he's going to be at some measurable disadvantages against Gautier. Physically, I don't think we're talking about two guys on the same level in terms of physicality at all. And so, I think Ateba Gautier is going to want to keep space, keep distance. I would not be surprised if Ateba Gautier wanted a takedown, if he was able to take this guy down. And, again, if I'm his coach, I'm like, no, let's keep it on the feet, buddy. Let's not do that. But I just feel like when I look at these two guys and how they match up, I think Gautier hits a little bit harder, trusts his offense a little bit more pressure. Young guy, big guy, heavy hitter. I think he's probably the more durable party overall as well. And when you look at Pulyaev, he's getting bullied around the cage multiple times now, getting held around the cage, getting physically bullied. And I think that that's just not a good recipe against Gautier because unlike some of those guys who wanted to hold him, I think Gautier will want to punish him if he gets him in those spots. What do you think, man? Do you feel like Pulyaev, is worth the, click at a big plus money underdog price, or you feel like he's probably being a lamb to slaughter here? What's the thought?
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Like if you're getting out physical by Christian Leroy Duncan.
CLD kind of a sneaky athlete, but I know what you're saying.
He's a sneaky athlete, but his pressure was never known to be the greatest against UFC level competition. I'm not talking about these Cage Warriors guys. He was never a guy to get, to out physical anybody in the UFC. He's the one that's getting out physical a lot of the time. And man, he was just walking down Pulyaev like it was nothing. If he couldn't take down CLD, I really don't think he can do it to Ateba. Ateba is twice the specimen that CLD is. And we have to say this. This guy is at a great camp. And I expect them to at least expect some sort of takedown threat. Whether it's from the body lock, whether it's from a double leg or a single leg, whichever way. If we already know that the guy is extremely athletic and extremely gifted and such a good boxer, then let's shore up the rest. His Muay Thai is clean. Shore up the wrestling and the takedown defense. I think he passes with flying colors again. I think this is a first round finish.
Fair play, my man. I do think, Pulyaev might be running a reverse marathon in the big cage. So maybe it takes a little bit of time for him to track him down, but should be interesting. And, to Dixon's point, do we know Ateba isn't a white belt on the mat? I mean, he's been training for several years now. I don't think a white belt would be fair, but is he a blue belt? Yeah, that's probably true. But there's blue belts that are freak athletes, and then there's blue belts that are not freak athletes. And I would just point you to the Derek Lewis School of Self-Defense, where the guy has routinely gotten up from much better grapplers by being the strongest blue belt in Texas. So I do think that, physicality matters, right? And any grappler will tell you that, but skill also matters. So if I thought Pulyaev was like, this world-class wrestler who's dominant physically, I'd be like, yeah, let's find out. But I think that Pulyaev is most comfortable as a striker who's retreating on the back foot. And I don't think that plays very well against Gautier. And I think the UFC would like to set up Gautier for success overall. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting test always for a guy to fight the first actual winner they fought inside the octagon, right? He fought a couple of guys that are probably not going to be long for the UFC. Next up, my man, we got cousin Umar making his return. He just went out there and beat up Mario Batista, and that was an impressive performance as far as I'm concerned. Mario Batista, he's got a lot of wins in the UFC, man. He's been out there a lot of times, and the guys he's lost to, with the exception of Trevin Five-Star Jones, have been aces. So I think that you look at Umar and the fact he was able to bounce back from the Merab fight. That Merab fight was a sensational performance. He didn't win, but Merab was a really tough guy to beat on the height of his powers, and he went out there and fought him close. Every round was pretty competitive. The problem was Merab had better optics. He understood what the judges were looking for more, and he sold his win. Hands up in the air. Tell him what you did. Throw him down to the ground. Things that sell people on who's winning a fight when it's otherwise very close. And I think that you look at Deiveson Figueiredo, and the fact that he missed weight is just one more data point that tells me he's not the same guy. He's not checked in on his career in the same way. He doesn't have the same drive and the same desire. And I think cousin Umar, you'd have to take it away from him. And I don't think Deiveson's in a position to do that. I think the dynamic physicality that he had at flyweight does not translate against these guys at bantamweight. And I think Umar Nurmagomedov right now is one of the best bantamweights in the world. I think Deiveson Figueiredo's window closed when he lost to Petr Yan. He had one opportunity to go out there and do it, and he sold out, man. He poured out the jug. That Sandhagen fight, he got injured there, but he was looking slow and lethargic prior to that. And I think that when you look at Umar, he's fast. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and I think he's going to assert his will and his dominance. I think he's going to win this fight. I think he's going to finish the former champion, and it might be the end of his career. That's the way I see it going down. What do you think, Wiz?
Yeah, I'm not going to add too much more to that. He's minus 1,600 favorite, and I think it's warranted for multiple reasons. Just better athlete, younger, more well-rounded, better in probably all facets of MMA, except for power, probably. And there's no disrespect to former champ Deiveson, but it's just an age factor. It's just a mileage factor. It's just also a size factor here. There's a lot of elements working against him, and I just think Umar is on a revenge tour now after suffering his first loss. So yeah, I think he goes out there and he submits Deiveson Figueiredo in the second round.
There you have it. And I will say, our guy Dixon saying he's going to be position over submission. We will have to see, my brother. I think that he's definitely a guy who plays the conservative game. He's willing to do that. But I think Deiveson, unfortunately, is a guy who, he lost the first battle already, man. He didn't make the weight. And that's the first time he's done that since his flyweight days, right? He's up in a new weight class where it should be easier to make the weight in theory. And I just don't think he's the same guy. I don't think he's invested in the same way. 38 years of age. I think it's much more likely that if he gets hit on the chin here, he gets hurt in ways that he wouldn't earlier in his career. So for all those reasons, give me Umar. And I think he's probably going to hurt him at some point and finish him. Next up, man, the battle of the two self-proclaimed autists. I'll have you start us off, my man. Awesome fight. Who you got?
Man, I kind of gave away my my prediction already. But yeah, we're looking at arguably one of the most violent guys in the UFC right now, and Gene Silva going up against Arnold Allen, someone who, if I remember correctly, has not been finished yet in his career. Let me triple check that. Yeah, has never been finished in his career. So we're taking a look back here. Last fight for Gene Silva against Diego Lopez. We all remember the sequence that led to him getting into a full mount. Very unfortunate situation, but also very impressive that he survived. All of those elbows, all of those punches, the ground and pound. That is crazy that Gene was able to survive, come back in the second round, hurt Diego Lopez, and then that spinning elbow has to be not move of the year, like strike of the year in 2025, because the amount of spinning elbow and spinning back fist knockouts we had was nuts. And just credit to Diego, he timed it well, and maybe if they run it back, Gene Silva takes it. Arnold Allen here, he is going to have the speed advantage, but the physicality goes to Gene Silva. The striking goes to Gene Silva, and I think if Gene wants to wrestle, he could wrestle Arnold Allen, but I don't really see why he would want to do that. I think it might be a little difficult to track Allen at first because of his footwork and his speed, but after he lands the first couple of power punches and finds his rhythm, Gene can start digging into the body and masking shots. And I think that's where Arnold Allen gets finished for the first time in his career. And I think it happens in the third round. Second or third round is what my prediction. Gene Silva by knockout. Gene Silva is out here to announce himself again and make a statement. That last loss, I think, is really affecting him. So he could come out really aggressive and go for broke early, as he's done in previous fights, or he could be patient, wait it out, and not take too much risk, show maybe an improved IQ in terms of his game. So yeah, I think it's Gene Silva all the way here.
Man, I've kind of went back and forth on this fight all week, if I'm telling you the truth. And here's a couple things that stand out to me. I'll talk about, number one, I'm looking back at the data. Arnold Allen closed plus 150 against Max Holloway, plus 180 against Movsar Evloev, and he gave both of them an honest decision. I think it was probably Holloway, 48-47 at best for Arnold Allen, and then probably 49-46 on some cards. I think when you look at that fight with Movsar, he clearly took a round for Movsar, landed some big knees on his head. In a new era of MMA, he might have put him through the floorboards with those. But overall, he lost to the number one contender. He lost to a longtime former champion and one of the best guys in the history of the featherweight division. And he was a smaller underdog in both those fights. So for me, that makes it hard for me to get behind a guy like Gene from a betting standpoint in a fight like this, right? Does it mean I think he doesn't win? If you said gun to your head, pick the winner, I'd probably pick Gene Silva. I do think that he is a guy that fights hard. He's hard to put away. All the positive attributes you mentioned, he's tough. But I can also point back at some of his fights and say, does he blow everybody out of the water? The Charles Jourdain fight, that's an impressive win because he knocks out a guy who's never been knocked out before, sent him to a new weight class. That's impressive. But when you look at, all right, the Drew Dober fight, they were having an honest scrap. Like he busted him up. He cut him. He got the win there, and he looked impressive up a weight class.
Up at 155.
Yes, yeah, true. But he was having a scrap, right? And then you look back at the Kevin Vallejos fight, and Kevin's having great success since coming to the UFC, 3-0 in the UFC. It was a 29-28. Vallejos came out, started very hot in that fight, landed some big shots, got to him a little bit. And then Gene came out, recomposed himself, showed in round 2 and 3. He knows how to get the job done. But Kevin got tired there. Kevin kind of overspilled the jug early. And to your point about Gene, the things that bless him are also the things that curse him. If you ask me, if he takes his foot off the gas against Diego Lopez, he has a much better chance to win, where he starts to pick him apart and land some shots and move around the outside and use the speed. But instead, he wanted everything all at once. He had gotten hit hard in the first round, and he wanted to get everything back. And he was in the guy's face and trying to take everything back, landing some big shots. But he was staying around too long and giving him big opportunities to counter. And I do think that when you look at a guy like Gene, he's extremely emotional. He's crying on the way to the cage. He's crying looking at the belt. He's crying in the cage. He's slapping hands with guys and being friends. And there's some value to that. It's disarming some guys, right? Like Melsick, he shakes hands and then kills him, right? But some guys just don't play those games with you, and they won't do it with you. And they continue to piss you off, and they play ego battles with you. For me, Arnold Allen coming out and casting spells on him, trying to get him mad at the face-off, was like the most positive thing I've seen. And here's the other thing about Arnold. Arnold's coached by Firas Zahabi. Ayman Zahabi is one of the most improved fighters in the history of the UFC. Like, if you just look at early on Ayman Zahabi, 2018, getting knocked out by guys that aren't of that ilk, and then what he's produced ever since, it's been nothing short of exceptional. Firas Zahabi knows how to coach people to win martial arts competitions, And when you look at a guy like Arnold Allen, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has 2 ninja chokes in the UFC. Gene Silva has 1. So, there's a lot that you could say, that's good about Arnold Allen. I look at his resume. Here's the one hesitancy I have, and the reason I haven't pulled the trigger on that side is Arnold doesn't have a signature win. If you look through his resume, his best win is either Dan Hooker in an ill-fated attempt to come down to 145, or Calvin Kattar, who's now 7-8 in the UFC and blew out his knee in that fight, or pick it I forget who the other one is, where Arnold gets the win. I'll go back and look at his resume because I don't want to give anybody short shrift. Giga Chikadze passed his prime right before he got knocked out in his next fight, or Sadiq Yusuf. These are the options you could give for who's the best guy he beat, or Mads Burnell, way back. So who's the best guy Arnold Allen beat? It's like he's beaten a bunch of guys who are B tier, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good wins. He's a quality guy. He's proven even when he fights the guys who are A tier, like Max Holloway, like Movsar Evloev, he can dance with those guys. But Gene Silva kind of did that with Diego Lopez as well. So again, if you said to me, at their best, with their best skills and their most dangerous attributes, if this is a fight about damage, I feel like Gene Silva will probably do a little bit more damage. But if you ask me, if this is a point fighting match that's fought on the outside and it's a little tentative, who wins? I feel like Arnold Allen wins that fight. If it's a grappling match, I don't have an effing notion who's going to win this fight, dude. And I normally like to feel like I have a good insight. I feel like you've got 2 guys that both have dangerous skills, but I feel like Gene Silva is more accepting of getting taken down because he wants to fish for that choke and he wants to go for that stuff. And when he went against a real black belt in Diego Lopez, he got sunned on the mat, period, point blank. He had nothing for him on the mat. He had pure will to stay in the fight. He had pure heart to keep fighting through those elbows and keep trying to push away. The guy is a warrior. But did he show me that he looked like a black belt off of his back against Diego Lopez? No, he kind of got sunned there. Bad. And so when I think about this fight and how I would approach fighting Gene Silva, Arnold Allen's a big, strong guy. Huge. And he can go out there and try and lean on this guy, push him into the fence, fight his ego, make him angry, make him frustrated, knee him in the body, knee him in the legs, chip away at him. and try and really see what his grappling's all about. Because when Diego Lopez did that, he was kind of rinsing him. Then Diego Lopez was willing to swing it out with him on the feet because he's got the Mexican chin and he's willing to do all that. Arnold Allen, I've seen him hurt against Dan Hooker. I've seen him get, touched before. Evlo have kind of touched him a bit, kind of had him dazed. But when you look at his overall body of work, he is hard to put away. He is a guy that swings back. And against Dan Hooker, Dan thought he had him. He starts unloading and he got killed. And you just look at Arnold Allen is a guy that when forced to throw, he throws back. And Sadiq Youssef was having success point fighting with him. And every time Arnold was forced to throw, he hit Sadiq with something that had him doing the salsa. So I do think when you look at a guy like Arnold, he's shown he can fight a lot of different ways and have success. You don't get 11 wins in the UFC by accident. So for me, this is an honest fight where I'm going to hesitantly pick Gene Silva. But I do think for me, it's a money line dog or pass situation because I view Arnold Allen as a guy that you have to respect at plus 2XX. That's the way I see it. Should be a freaking banger, though, dude. This is a good fight to have on the first era of Paramount because there's no wrong option here. I feel like both these guys could be fun contenders. Arnold Allen needs somebody like Gene Silva to bring a great fight out of him, and I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, I just don't really rate – I'm not going to say I don't rate the wins that Arnold Allen has, but you listed them. They're not A-tier names at all. You can argue that most of them are not B-tier names. Dan Hooker going down to 145 means nothing to me. That win means zero. Calvin Kattar, knee injury. Also towards
Arnold. I would say Arnold was clearly winning that fight up until that point, though.
Yeah, he was, but that's fair. That's fair. Well, let's give him Calvin, even though Calvin is very one-dimensional, if I'm being honest, all due respect. Giga, as you mentioned, already towards the tail end of his career, kind of washed. I've never seen him face someone that has some sort of finishing ability or finishing power in terms of striking, but let alone just a better boxer. Calvin Kattar, great boxer. That fight did not play out completely. And then Giga Chikadze, I'm sorry, I'm not. No, he's just kicking.
I think Gene has slightly better wins, but Gene doesn't have one win that jumps off the page. It's like, oh my, this is the defining win of his career either. Like obviously the win over Vallejos, I've always said has aged like a fine wine, but Kevin Vallejos was having a competitive fight with Danny Silva 2 fights ago,
Yeah, let's throw that one out. I think Charles Jourdain, that win at the time.
Again, that's a solid win, but I think Charles is a couple fights, maybe if that, above 500 in the UFC.
Correct.
And again, he's quality, but you got to parse hairs here a little bit.
Fair. That's fair. I would say that at this point in the career of Charles Jourdain, because more recently he's been rounding into his form and coming into his own.
Dude, at 135, forget about it. This guy's ready for prime time.
Man, what a fight. I can't wait.
Hell yeah, man. That brings us to a fight I have to admit I'm less excited about. We have Natalia Silva taking on Rose Namajunas. But I will say this. If Natalia Silva wins, I'm excited about it. Because I described her in my article this week as a breath of fresh air in the flyweight division. Goes out there, and does she always finish the fight? No. But she has just shown a new kind of class in this division, an ability to go out there and not just win, but win cleanly, to go out there and win effectively. She fought in her very first fight a proven junkyard dog in Jasmine Jasudavicius, and she absolutely put her through the paces for the full 15. So I think that when you look at Natalia Silva since then, right, her last 2 fights are wins very clearly over former UFC champions. And you have to say, Natalia Silva, one more win over a former champion, and she has to be ready for a championship fight. She has to be ready for prime time. So I feel like Natalia Silva deserves this opportunity. I feel like Rose Namajunas has been very hit and miss in her recent fights. I do think there's a plausible case that, Miranda Maverick pushed her, in those rounds, like very close fight. So I don't think Rose Namajunas is blowing anybody out of the water these days, and she's been letting fights slip through her fingers late, getting tired in ways that she didn't at 115. I don't think this is the right weight class for her. I just think it's more comfortable. So for all those reasons, give me Natalia Silva, unanimous decision. I think she wins again. How about you, my man?
I can't get the thought of a Natalia Silva head kick knockout here. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm looking at the tape and I'm watching this tape over and over again, and you can bait Rose into a switch left high kick. You can bait Rose into a switch left high kick, and I really feel like Natalia Silva, given her acumen in the Muay Thai and the kicking game, I think she'll make that read and she'll get that head kick knockout here. Whether it comes in the second or third round, I feel like Natalia Silva, just footwork on its own is going to give Rose trouble. And Rose herself has some great footwork. So that can also be a thing in this fight that can slow down Natalia Silva early on. I think she might struggle to find her rhythm early on because Rose's footwork is good. She bounces around and moves around the octagon well. But as the fight goes on, I think Natalia Silva is going to start kicking the legs, slowing Rose down, making the angles herself, and I think she makes this read and gets that switch left high kick. It's off a takedown attempt from Rose Namajunas. But if we forget about the head kick knockout thing, if Rose goes for takedowns here, I'm not worried that Natalia won't pop back up. We've seen her go early on in her career against Jasmine Jastovicius, who we all know is a great top-time wrestler in the UFC now, proven. She was able to get up from under her multiple times. Not going to say the easiest fashion, but she was still able to get up. That's earlier on, so she definitely made some improvements since then. And I think Rose has been on the decline. She hasn't looked all that well in her last few fights, and on the scales today, she looked like it did not look like fighter shape. Obviously, this is just the line says it all. It's -400, -450 for a reason, and I just think that Natalia Silva here via knockout is the way I'm looking to target it. 2-3 KO or just 2-3 in general, and let's roll the dice.
Yeah, man, I have no interest at the price, but I will say I thought it was interesting that Moyes likes Rose to jump on her back, RNC. You know, Rose got RNC by Jillian Robertson in a grappling match with such a shocking quickness. I honestly couldn't believe it. That's why I feel in part that she's checked out on the game, but that is always an interesting note. And, you know, Moyes has blind called several submissions in this chat, so I got to give some credit there. Also, shout out to our guy Narco Cop MMA, one of the OGs, still putting out great content you can find all over the place. So shout out to our guy Narco. Overall, I feel like Natalia can land some powerful shots, some damaging shots, but I feel like she's very patient, happy to work off the back foot at times. You know, I feel like both these girls kind of might get into a little bit of a key-on match and, you know, kind of feinting at each other a lot. So I don't have the highest hopes for this in terms of entertainment value. I do think Natalia wins. I don't think there's value at -400. So pretty simple fight for me to just pass and, you know, maybe go get a beverage during the first round, unless my guy Moyes is right on this, jump on the back split, split second RNC call. But with that being said, my man, we got heavyweights. We got action. Derek Lewis taking on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. And I did, make a bold prediction earlier this year that, Waldo Cortes-Acosta would fight for the title this year. And the reason I made that call is the guy is basically saying yes to any opponent at any time. And when you look at a guy like that, the UFC loves them. They're willing to give them opportunities when they're, basically short of somebody who's willing to step up on short notice. And these guys say yes. Waldo fought 5 times in 2025. He's now fighting on the first card of 2026. This guy gets after it. I think that's a blessing and a curse, So I think that when you look at this matchup, I always keep it a buck, right? If this is a pick'em fight, of course I'm going with Waldo. He's the young guys, whatever. But it's not a pick'em fight, and he's now installed as a 75+% favorite. When Waldo, I can remember, guys, when I bet him +2XX against Robelis to Spain. Okay? So, like, the market, how quickly, people's perception changes, right? Waldo was a bum. He sucks. He's going to get his head kicked off by this karate master, blah, 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 or taekwondo master, whatever the hell he does. No disrespect. I can't remember. But when you look, I was just looking at that fight going, if this guy wrestles at all, he'll win. And he wrestled and he won. So when I look at this fight, I'm like, could Derek Lewis win this fight via knockout? I think the answer is yes. Waldo took some absolute bombs from Sergey Pavlovich, but if you take bombs, that means you're getting hit with bombs, and you don't want to get hit with bombs in heavyweight fighting. You could go down at any time. And Waldo, he was hurt, briefly and had to cover up because of an eye thing. And luckily for him, he got an intervention there. He's been taking damage in some of these fights, even though he wins them. And when you keep fighting back to back to back and don't give yourself any recovery, I think you can get clipped. You can get knocked out. Derek Lewis is coming off a win, and he took, much longer time off. So compared to Waldo. And I feel like Derek Lewis is coming into this fight feeling good. Everything's well rested. He's healed up. He's ready to go. Even though he's 40 years of age, this is heavyweight fighting. And heavyweight fighting, guys stick around for a long time. I'll remind people, 44-year-old Andrey Arlovsky had a very competitive fight with Waldo where Waldo was not doing very much, and he was kind of just dancing around a little bit. So when I look at this fight, I don't know that Derek Lewis can't take Waldo down. Like, Derek Lewis, when he decides to barnyard tackle somebody and run through him, he normally gets on top. And when you look at Waldo, I haven't seen many guys try to wrestle with this guy. The guys that have had mixed levels of success, but I can remember Sergey Spivak having some boxing success, fighting to a very close decision with Waldo. So Waldo doesn't always blow people out on the cards. And Derek Lewis, I think, is 4-1 in UFC decisions. The guy knows how to go out there and win rounds by hitting people one time, by doing just one strike more than them. You know what I mean? Like, Derek Lewis kind of understands the game that he plays, and he's knocked out 16 out of 20 UFC wins. This guy is extremely dangerous. So I think when you look at Derek Lewis, when he loses, is always going to look terrible. But when he wins, he can do it a couple of different ways for you, and he can get the job done. And he's willing to lie, cheat, steal, and do whatever it takes to try and win. So for all those reasons, I think Derek is a live underdog. I just have a weird feeling he's going to win this fight. Like, gut level, I am either going to be right about my Waldo, futures ideas, or I'm going to be right about Derek, because I feel like this is not the right matchup for Waldo. After fighting 5 times last year, Derek Lewis, who's very opportunistic and willing to do whatever it takes to win. Obviously he will fold up to 10 if it's not his night. But what I mean is Derek Lewis will poke you in the eye. He'll pretend to be hurt and then throw a punch at you. He does not feel bad about anything that happens in that cage. So I like the aggression and the violent streak from Derek Lewis. And he's been putting up his best DraftKings scores to date in his last couple of fights. So I think you got to give a little bit of credit to Lewis for showing up in good form and taking guys out.
Interesting fight. I don't have too much opinions, I'll be honest, because I have not had the best of reads on Waldo fights. I still, till this day, will say that Ante Delia got robbed. That fight should have been stopped. You cannot stop a fight and then start a fight. It's just, whenever that happens, historically in the UFC, I don't remember a single time where the fighter that won ended up winning the fight. So when it restarted. So let's just put it that way. The fighter, I think
Murillo Bustamante in the 90s, but yeah, man, not a very common occurrence.
Oh yeah, not a common occurrence at all, because what happens is the fighter's adrenaline dumps completely. They're celebrating, they won the fight, all of the adrenaline's gone, you're happy, that tense focus is completely gone. You remember the biggest one was Jake Matthews against Neil Magny. Shouldn't have been.
Oh, that was a brutal one. That was a brutal one. I had to fight not to go. I had to fight not to go.
I called the Magniverse on this show. I called the Magniverse.
Let's go.
They didn't let me get the Magniverse.
So yeah,
Jason Herzog assist.
Hate that guy. But yeah,
I don't even know if he was the ref for that fight. This could be total misinformation.
Yeah. Still, he's done me wrong too many times. But yeah, the Ante Delija win, I don't really think that's his win. I'm just going to be honest there. The Shamil Gaziyev win, very impressive. But here's the thing. Waldo, like you said, is not really known for that one-shot power. And in my book, once a jabber, always a jabber. This guy, we've seen him early on in his career to just go out there and just jab over and over and over. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but Derek Lewis will be able to counter over the jabs with pretty much anyone in the UFC at this point. So I would rather take the dog shot on Lewis here. I'm not afraid of the 40-year-old age, and in his case, because dude hasn't taken too much damage, like life-altering damage in terms of cage time, and is still doing it at the highest level and getting wins. So yeah, give me Derek Lewis, dogger pass. Not the most inspired breakdown, but
dude, I totally agree with it. And when you look, it's not like Derek has needed to get it done in round one even recently. He's got a 3-round win on his resume very recently. So I just feel like Derek Lewis is a guy, he maintains his power late in fights. He keeps going for his opportunities if you don't take him out of there. And Waldo, I know he's gotten a couple knockouts recently, but he wasn't the most vicious finisher early in his UFC run. And I'm not sure that that's going to last, moving forward. So let's find out. Excited to see it. And it should be great heavyweight action.
Are we ready for it? It's Derek Lewis by decision. That's the long shot prop of the show. And I'm doing my best.
Lewis and Goddard too. We all know who won that night.
Eating these Keebler fudge cookies. My best heavyweight impression. We're trying to get to 265. No, hell no. I'm at like 176 right now. I feel like a bone.
I could tell you who absolutely had no cookies this fight camp, and that was Song Yadong. He's taking Sean O'Malley at this fight card, and this is a 3-rounder, guys. Sean O'Malley fought 2 5-rounders in a row against Merab Dvalishvili. Both of those ended in disaster. The first fight was at least marginally competitive, but going into that 5th round, his coach needed to, coach him off the stool and say, hey, buddy, we only got to do 5 more minutes. Okay, pal? Like, it was tough. It was a tough visual as far as I'm concerned. It's different when you're coaching kids versus when you're coaching grown men in a cage fight. And he was basically having to talk to him like he was his buddy sitting on his knee. Hey, pal, it's okay. It's going to be okay. We'll get through this. And Sean went out there and even landed a decent shot to the body in that 5th round, hilariously enough. But he was ready to give up on himself in that fight. And his coach needed to talk him off the ledge. And in his next fight, he gave up against Merab, as far as I'm concerned. And listen, far be it from me to take anything away from a guy who steps in the cage. It's the man in the arena, period. But when you look at me observing from the outside, I can point at history as a indicator that not many guys get north-south choked in the UFC, right? There's some steps between getting north-south choked and what you need to do defensively. And he didn't really exhibit those steps. It looked like he was ready to go as far as I was concerned. So if that's the case, I don't know where his head's at coming into this fight. I know that he's talking about, hey, I've got maybe a year left in me, so let's go, go fight for the title and do something big and go out on top. That all sounds great, but that's easier to say and harder to go do. And, Song Yadong, the one thing I will say watching back his film this week, I've never seen this man quit. I've never seen this man give up. I've seen him get damaged. I've seen him, be in a position where he can no longer continue in that Sandhagen fight because he had, a third eye growing out of his, eyelid, right? It did not look good there. But aside from that, I've seen Song Yadong constantly willing to battle through adversity, get hit and keep going. And against Petr Yan, I thought he got out-savvied, And you could argue the same thing happened to Sean O'Malley. He just got better advocates, better judges, better decisions. And I think that when you look at a guy like Sean O'Malley, he's an excellent striker. He's a devastating guy from the outside. But we can point at the Pedro Munoz fight where, he was kind of fortunate that it ended up a no contest because it was a really ugly fight up until that point. And it didn't look like he was getting the better of Pedro. And I could just say Pedro's got one of the best chins in the history of the bantamweight division, period. So not going to put that guy away easily. And it didn't seem like Sean was getting close. So you look at those fights, you look at some of these other fights that Sean has had, and it's not always been easy sledding. He got damaged badly in the Petr Yan fight. He got taken down, controlled multiple times in that fight. And you look at, the Merab fight, it goes from bad to worse the second time he fights him. That's not good for your confidence. That's moving in the wrong direction. And he also had a surgery in that time. And so where is he at coming into this fight? He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of options, a lot of opportunities outside the cage. And he basically said in interviews like, yeah, if I lose this one, I suck. That doesn't sound like a guy who's supremely confident to me. And on the other side, I feel like Song Yadong is still all in on fighting. He still believes I can be champion. I can fight through adversity. I can do whatever it takes. He fought Petr Yan, won the first round, and fought competitive in round 2 and 3. He just got out-thought by a very savvy fighter who can fight everywhere, who can wrestle, who can grapple, who can do it all. And I feel like that well-rounded approach from Yan, that well-rounded approach from Sandhagen, who, by the way, tried to take down Song a million times and couldn't take him down, hardly could, right? You look at Song Yadong, he is hard to out-wrestle, and he gets his wrestling going against good guys. He took down Petr Yan. He nearly took his back. He controlled him on the mat, even as Petr Yan hit beautiful Granby rolls and did technically good things. Song Yadong was staying with him when he was fresh. It was just the pace of Petr Yan that he was able to fight at in all phases was what got to Song. And I feel like Sean O'Malley does not like fighting at a very high pace when he gets to the grappling situations, when he gets into those positions. He wants to slow it down. He wants to go piece by piece and do things right against the fence. And I feel like Song Yadong, if you give him those opportunities, number one, he showed against Corey Sandhagen, he can pop out on somebody's back. And Corey is extremely defensively responsible ever since he got submitted by Aljamain Sterling, because he never expected that to happen, and he got embarrassed. And when you look at Song Yadong, he did so many things right in that fight, but Corey was just one step more prepared. And when you look at a guy like Sean O'Malley, I think his, if he makes this a pure striking fight, then it should be his fight to lose, because he's longer, he's taller, and he's got a great range game. But Song Yadong does things that bother him, like kicking the legs hard, like committing to his offense on the feet, pushing forward through shots. And he will go out there, and against most of his recent opponents, he tries to take them down. And I feel like if he does that here, he's going to take Sean O'Malley down. So I believe that this is a more competitive fight than the odds suggest. I am waiting for more money to come in on Sean O'Malley. It has been interesting to me that this line has not moved off plus 175 all week, even though it seems to me like everybody is betting Sean O'Malley. So as far as I'm concerned, Song Yadong is an underrated wrestler. He does not go for submission attempts very often. I think he will attempt a submission in this fight. And I think that on the feet, he is a underdog, but I do not think he's a fish out of water that has no chance. I think he knows how to fight on the feet. He's comfortable fighting on the feet. He's comfortable fighting through adversity. And if this is a fight about who's got more dog in them, I think Song Yadong will win the fight. So for those reasons, I think it's a banger fight. I think it should be fun. I think it's going to be a great scrap. I think if Sean does not get submitted, this fight is probably going the full 15, win or lose. But I think that this is an opportunity for Song Yadong to take everything Sean O'Malley's ever worked for. And I think he's going to go out there and seize that opportunity. What do you think, buddy?
Great breakdown, brother. I got to say. And, I'm going to be honest. I'm a little biased in this breakdown because I don't have direct connections with Song Yadong. I just have a couple of friends out here that know him personally and are really good friends with him and treat him like family. So, nice guy, been around him. But you look at this fight, and if we're breaking it down cut and dry, and we're not considering momentum and career positioning, skill for skill, I think if this fight is on the feet, Sean O'Malley should have no issue at all. My issue is, and this is just something that I personally have always seen in breakdowns when it comes to this situation. So when someone that's already seen the highest of highs in the sport, was champ, came back, rematched lost, fell short, and is kind of on this resurgence or trying to find his career trajectory again. I tend to not really favor that specific fighter in future matchups, especially when his opponent has the wrestling, which is his kryptonite, and training at Alpha Male, which will only help more and more. But also you have someone in Song Yadong who has a couple of losses under his belt now, has tasted defeat, is still hungry and still has a lot to offer in the sport, has not reached the pinnacle, has never even fought for the belt yet, coming up against a former champ who is on a 2-fight skid with a glaring hole in his game, and you're a plus 170 underdog right now. It makes no sense to me. All things considered, though, if Sean O'Malley is actually improving and or him training for Merab's onslaught with takedowns has actually improved his takedown defense significantly to the point where Song Yadong's takedown attempts aren't really phasing him. Because let's face it, Merab Dvalishvili is a different type of fighter. He's someone who will shoot 30-plus takedowns in a fight and not get tired. I don't think any fighter can do that besides him. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sean O'Malley is able to stuff the first couple of takedowns and out of nowhere Song starts to slow down slightly. Sean O'Malley, this is a 3-round fight. He hasn't had a 3-round fight in quite some time now. So he does not have to conserve himself for the later rounds if it gets there. And he said it himself in an interview. He's going for broke, but that could also work against him here. If you're going for broke and, Song shoots a well-timed takedown, you're flat on your back, buddy. So I do think that Song is going to wrestle in this fight, and I think he's going to look to wrestle early and often. And I think that I would like to play him at a better price than plus 170 if I'm being quite honest. So I'm waiting. But I think Song Yadong wins this fight. I think he can win via ground and pound. I think he can win on the feet as well. It's not out of the realm of possibility where he slips a punch, enters in the range, and throws that big overhand that he has, lands one on O'Malley, and maybe it's a club and sub. There's a lot of avenues here. Sean O'Malley can also...
I mean, Merab was kind of beating his ass on the feet in the last fight. Yeah. I think people will forget. But
we have to admit that is also because of the threat of the takedown was so large. If Song can land the early takedowns, then yes, I do agree. So yeah, give me Song here. Shout out my Chinese brother, Xinyan Kuai Le. Come on, brother, let's go, Song.
Yeah, man, I gotta say, I've been sitting on my hands all week. I do think we will see plus 200s again before the event kicks off. So that's why I'm trying to just be patient. But I think ultimately it's a dogger pass for me, based on the style dynamics that we talked about. And, some people were asking about takedown ladders and stuff like that. I think he's preparing to shoot takedowns. I think the plan is to shoot takedowns. I think he's going to come out of here shooting takedowns. And I will just note, I think Song Yadong, the one fight where he couldn't keep up was the Petr Yan fight. And Yan is a championship caliber fighter, so you got to give him that. But when you look at his 5-round fights with Ricky Simone, with Chris Gutierrez, he looked absolutely fine for 5 rounds. So I feel like it's a case-by-case basis with Song, but at 28 years of age, in the best shape of his life, I think he's going to have 15 minutes of gas. So I'm fired up about this. But, man, we're all fired up
before we get to the main event. I just wanted to respond to Cole here. Brother, the plus 3.5, I wouldn't. The only reason I say that is because I think most of Sean's win equity here is a finish. I think it really is a knockout.
Interesting. I do think that I had considered that 3.5, but I would probably prefer the money line. I just think that if this fight goes 15 minutes, I would be surprised if Song Yadong didn't win a round, honestly. Yep. Just the way he fights, the way he's competed with everybody else. So it should be interesting, though. Let's find out, man. Next up, though, we have the piece de resistance, the fight that everybody's looking for, the all-action fight, the main event. It's Justin Gaethje, the human highlight reel. He's taking on Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. I think that when you look at Paddy Pimblett, I had tweeted a long time ago, who does Paddy Pimblett need to beat in order for you guys to consider him a good fighter? And every time the goalposts change, it's like before the Chandler fight, I had people tell me dead serious, like Chandler's going to fuck him up, dude. It's not going to be close. Like Chandler's too big, too strong. He knows how to wrestle. Like Chandler's going to dominate. And people I respect. And that fight was not competitive even in any way, shape, or form. The earliest round, Michael got a takedown or two, but he was in a negative damage relationship with Paddy despite being in the top position. When you look at my guy in the chat says, it sounds like I've been partying. I've been doing the exact opposite, my man. I have just been coaching wrestling. But I look at this fight and I say to myself, you got two guys here that are both, maybe getting favorable opportunities, right? Like Justin Gaethje, he's lost, I think, 3 of his last 6 fights is off the top of my head. And, he's gotten finished in those fights. He's gotten hurt badly. He's suffered real damage. And then in the fights that he's won, he beat Figueiredo twice, and that's a quality win, but, kind of a way different style matchup, right? And, you look at a guy like that, he also beat Dustin Poirier, who's since retired. And I think Justin Gaethje is going to be pretty soon to retire. He said, if I don't get the title shot, I'm retiring. Here's his title shot, If he loses this fight, he's probably retiring. If he wins it, he's going to fight for the belt, and then he's going to retire, it sounds like. So Justin Gaethje, for me, I'm worried about the guy because it already sounds like, sometimes when he's talking in interviews and stuff, like he's got some marbles in his mouth. Like there's some things that concern me about his cognition. The way he fights is not sustainable long-term. And he made some changes later in his career to try and get more, defensively savvy on the feet, to roll with more shots, to cover up a little bit more. But the guy's style is predicated on, let me get in there and bang. And Jake in the chat says he still has nasty staff. That's absolutely true. And so when you take a guy like Paddy Pimblett, who is all offense, no defense, does it give Gaethje an opportunity? It could. Like Gaethje is a guy that throws for the fences. He hits incredibly hard, and he can knock people out. And that is the one thing that could get Paddy in this fight, as far as I'm concerned, is getting clipped on the chin or not being able to get any ground exchanges. But I think when you look at a guy like Paddy Pimblett, he's gotten much better with his striking over the course of his UFC career. I honestly believe after rewatching on the night of, I thought Paddy got robbed, I thought Jared Gordon got robbed. I thought it was obvious. And I rewatched again with a close eye this week. And I honestly thought Paddy won that fight. It was ugly. It wasn't a great win, but I thought he did more damage in the second and third rounds of that fight. And I thought that was why he was awarded the win. It wasn't a clean, dominant win, but he found a way to win. And Jared Gordon, I will remind people, is a pretty savvy guy. When he doesn't get hit by a car before the fight, he's a tough out for most guys in the division. And when you look at a guy like Paddy, what he's done since, he's shown me in the Michael Chandler fight, he was committing to his leg kicks. He had a plan on the feet. He was going out there and intercepting Chandler when he tried to get aggressive. In order to convince him not to get aggressive, he was kneeing up the middle. He was throwing sharp shots, and he cut up Michael Chandler. He beat him up. He damaged him. He gave him a life-altering beating. That's the truth. And so when you look at Justin Gaethje is a guy that has real wrestling credentials, and he knows how to hit funk rolls and do all this stuff. I think that if you take Justin Gaethje and he doesn't ever get touched in a fight, then he would wrestle and grapple pretty well. But he gets into a wild fight. He's willing to get hit in his fights, and he gets hurt all the time. And when you're hurt, you don't make great decisions. And guys that are opportunistic grapplers, guys that really understand submissions, when Justin Gaethje is hurt, they take advantage of it, and they can put him away on the mat. And that's exactly what Charles did. And so Justin said in his interviews, he's like, hey, I want people to stop saying I'm a bad grappler. I'm not a bad grappler. The problem is when he gets hurt, when he panics, he makes bad decisions on the mat. And then it doesn't matter if you're a good grappler or not. You have to make good decisions in order to grapple well. And Justin Gaethje, whether it's via virtue of him getting hurt or him panicking when he's in a bad situation, I think that he could get tapped by Paddy, and I think he could get hurt and get put away and get finished. So ultimately, in terms of a lean on this fight, if I was looking to part ways with my dollars, I'd be looking at the under 3.5 here. You're laying some chalk, but I think that you're getting a lot of the equity for both fighters, because I think Paddy Pimblett is a guy that goes out there looking to be opportunistic and put fights away when a guy shows him the door. And I think that Justin Gaethje on the other side is a guy that's going to pour out everything that he has left, trying to punch a hole through this guy's head. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's gassed in 10 minutes, because if you have staph, you will gas, period. If you're on antibiotics, you will gas, period. So I think that when you look at this fight, I lean towards Paddy. I think he gets the job done via finish, but I think if Justin Gaethje upsets the apple cart, he does it with a brutal, devastating knockout. So I'm excited for this fight, man. It's going to be a great start to the Paramount era, and I think it's going to be the start of the Paddy the Baddy era. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm not really going to touch up too much more. I have the exact same breakdown as you, Liam. To be honest, I really feel like this fight is violence and violence on steroids. Justin Gaethje, we've seen the staph on his neck. Antibiotics, as a couple of the people in the chat are mentioning, this is just routine now. We all know this. It will affect the cardio. It will affect the gas tank. And Justin Gaethje is someone that we know is not there to mess around. He's going to go in there and actually get in front of Paddy and try to knock him out. He's not skirting outside the cage and acting defensive. And Paddy himself, he will move forward too. So we won't have a lack of offense from either guy. And if this fight hits the mat, I just think Paddy washes Gaethje. I have no other way of saying it. I think he's going to be able to get to his positions here and win via rear naked choke. And on the feet, I do think that Paddy Pimblett is there to be hit. And I do not think that it's out of the realm of possibility that Gaethje lands that big knockout punch and sends Paddy out via knockout. But I think what the UFC wants is a Paddy the Baddy win. So yeah, give me Paddy inside the distance. I'd love the under 3.5. Once you tweeted it out, I was like, dang, we're on the same stuff now. And I think this is the one spot on this card where we feel probably the most passionate from giving our breakdowns. Smash spot. Let's go Paddy the Baddy.
I absolutely love it. Let's go somebody getting finished. Let's go violent finishes on this one. That would be very nice. If it's Paddy the Baddy, hats off to him. I'll buy him a beer. If it's Justin Gaethje, hats off to him. I'll buy him a beer. But when you look at it, man, I look at a fight where both guys have their opportunistic finishes. And you look at Justin Gaethje's career, this guy's been to decision 5 times in 31 fights. He goes out there and gets after it. He's like, somebody's going home on their shield, you or me, buddy. And then he finds out. So I think if he's going out, I think if he's retiring, he's going out getting finished in a blaze of glory like a true OG. So it should be awesome, man. Anything you want to tell the people, anything you want to get off your chest, my brother, the floor is yours. What you got?
Man, first, before we end this breakdown on the main event, I saw this meme online. It was really funny. I'm not sure if you know the rapper SD Kid, but they did say that Paddy the Baddy should come out to one of his songs because he's Scouse. So it would be hilarious, but we already know what Paddy the Baddy comes out to, a walkout song. So he's never going to change that. But no, guys, thanks for such a huge turnout for the first card of the year. Thanks for being so interactive in the chat. I really and truly think Fridays have the most interaction by far. Everyone's off work, weekend starts, and we get the most accurate and latest numbers in terms of the odds, and also post weigh-ins, which is the most important thing, which if we did it the day before, we would have to break down another fight. We wouldn't have had the info that Deiveson Figueiredo missed weight. And that's just saying this card, there's only one fight that fell off. In the past, we've seen multiple post weigh-ins. So I think Fridays is a good time. Let us know what you guys think in terms of when you would prefer the show to go live. Obviously, Liam and I have revolving schedules, so we try to make it work on one of the 3 days between Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But excited to continue doing the show week over week and winning some more cash, brother.
Absolutely, my man. Last year was a good year. Knock on wood. We'll keep it rolling this year. So one bet, one event at a time, always. I want to just say, I see my guy Dixon asking for a cycle parlay. I don't want to get accused of gimmick infringement, my brother. I know that our guy Matty Betts is holding it down. Shout out to Nolan Knows MMA as well, popping up in the chat, and OG, very sharp guy as well, doing his thing. So check out his work. And I want to say everybody in the chat was fired up today. Appreciate you all. Thank you all so much for the comments and everybody's feedback. Let's see what we can cook up real quick for our guy. So in terms of how I'm going to look at this, let's say if we're looking for somebody to win via all methods, you know, I do think Ty Miller's going to win the fight via knockout. That's a little bit on the chalky side. I could definitely see Lewis winning via KO or decision if he was to come through as a dog. So that one's kind of hard to iron out. I could see Hernandez winning via knockout or submission. So again, these are some tough ones. Let's
go Umar sub.
Umar sub we could get behind. I could get behind that. I'm worried he'll knock him out, but I could get behind that.
Or what's Umar ITD?
And Ty KO.
Yeah, we could do Umar ITD in that case if you're worried about the knockout.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's say Umar ITD, and then we'll go Ty Miller.
All right, you know
KO.
what? Look, Umar ITD and fight doesn't go distance are the same line, plus 105. So fight doesn't go distance, plus 105. We get some equity there.
Absolutely. Just in case my guy rolls an ankle on the way into the cage or something, you never know in this MMA game. I had Brian Ortega. He's jumping up and down, rolls his ankle. I wanted to puke in my hands, and he still won the fight. Yair Rodriguez, what are you doing? But
he pulls a fat Barnett.
I have to say this as well. In terms of the decision, I say Natalia Silva. What do you say on that?
Man, I can agree with the decision there. The long shot is
I know it's tough. It's tough. The long shot on the knockout. That's how you hedge. If you're going into that fight, that's how you hedge. You hedge with the Natalia Silva.
I like it. I like
it. I love it, man. So obviously, this is in jest. We're just having fun here. But all my thoughts, everything, I will have out before tomorrow. Main card preview already published. Prelim preview already published, so you can check out my work, written and otherwise, Roto Grinders, in the description down below as well on Patreon. All that. Appreciate you guys for the love and support. God bless. Good luck. Enjoy those fights. Enjoy the Paramount era, and come back next week. We're having all the same fun again. It's another numbered event. I might even have a voice next week. Thanks again, guys. We'll see y'all very soon. Take care.